that we have. So I hope the caffeine has woken you up because this next session will kind of aim to tie together a lot of the sessions that we've been seeing over the past couple of days and really make that a pivot to look towards the future through everything that we've learned. So it's a session titled Vision, and it's mysterious for a reason because Asanka and Arjette will clarify once they're up there. So let me introduce them. Back on stage for the enigma of this session is Asanka De Mel, the founder of Lovi, which he founded to create an authentic and united fashion identity rooted in the Sri Lankan ethos, with the hope of sharing his love of this island paradise, its people, and its culture with the world. He is a visionary working towards developing Sri Lanka and building Lovi into an international fashion brand. Joining Asanka for Vision is Arjette Vandenberg, who is a senior advisor to AFIG funds focused on pre and post investment due diligence, interim portfolio company management, and portfolio company analysis. She has advised both direct and fund investors on portfolio valuations and PE fund analysis, including the African Development Bank and Tata Capital. Asanka and Arjette, we would love to hear about your visions.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for for listening to this session called Vision. It's a real privilege to be here and a privilege to interview Asanka on a book that he wrote, a very interesting book called A Speech to Sri Lanka from 2048. So Asanka, let me start.
No hard questions, okay? I'm going to throw the question right back to the audience and say, let them answer for a change.
So let's start with an easy one. How was the boat cruise yesterday night?
It was pretty good, actually. The boat cruise was quite nice, actually, because I think we had a chance to catch up and see, yeah. Let's talk about boat cruise weather. I told her, like, if you ask me questions, I'll answer about the weather.
So tell us, why did you write this book?
Well, I thought you're not asking hard questions. I think more like the book needed to be written, and it just kind of picked me to write it. It was not intentional. I'm not a writer, or not even aspiring. I was, as many of you know, I was a computer scientist, so code is what I write, and even the comments is not what we want to write. So, but the idea is that, how do we actually, I've been here for 9 years, moved back from San Francisco to here to, just get involved about Sri Lanka and development and know what it is, what's happening here. And over the 9 years, maybe at least 8,000 conversations just to understand what various people are talking. And all my life, I've heard that I'm born into a developing country and I am living in a developing country, and I'm looking for a plan where we are going to be a developed country. And frankly, I don't see any. And I was surprised thoroughly by looking at all the research and the papers, not only from political parties or various organizations, but when you really look at it, there is no plan. There's no 30-year vision, there's no 25-year vision, there's no vision that takes you to a developed country. And one of the key challenges without even an ambitious vision, it's very hard to mobilize people. And so this was my attempt to say, okay, we are a little below 4,000 per capita GDP today. How do we get to 40,000 per capita GDP? And because 40,000 is roughly the entry point to most developed country income levels. So how do we make this 10x transformation within roughly the next 25 years? And that's the premise of the the thing. We need a plan on how to get there. And the book is written as fiction. And actually, just we are here because this conference started because after I wrote it, I was thinking, how do I make this actually happen? How do I bring all the best minds in the world to Sri Lanka and get them to solve this particular problem? So this is how Big Bold Brave also started, because it is essentially all of you coming, thinking about how do we get Sri Lanka from 4 to 40,000.
Thank you. And in the book, you outline 3 laws that will help get Sri Lanka from a 4,000 GDP per capita to a 40,000. Can we talk about the first law?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're doing something like 10x, and which is obviously an ambitious thing, what you want to do is to find the least amount of things you need to get there, because you might have lots of ideas on how to get there, but the more you think put in there, the more complicated it is. Actually, Mr. Gurucharan Das is here. His book was inspirational, and I had actually one of his colleagues, Mr. Nobel winner Amartya Sen, who was very instrumental in actually helping me get this book. Because the idea is, how do you, if you have such a kind of an ambitious goal, how do you simplify it? Because one of the challenges is that if you have a very complex thing to execute, it's very, very difficult. So what is the minimum kind of things you need to do? And that is boiled down to 3 things. First is, we know that if you want 40,000, meaning that the people in, say, in 2050 should be having jobs that pay at least $60,000 a year or something. So they should be, their income should be around 60,000 in today's dollars, at least about $60,000. So how do we create those jobs? How do we train a new generation to actually be ready for those jobs? How do we create the universities, institutions, businesses, the infrastructure to create those jobs? And if you can manage, for example, one way to look at it is, so the first rule is human capital development. How do we get our Sri Lankans to have $60,000 jobs roughly in about 25 years? And that requires a whole lot of activity from education to institutions to get us there.
So on human capital development, more concretely and more specifically, what can the country do to fast track that?
Well, several things. One is, there's things that we are, I think in the earlier, there was a jobs panel. We had actually 2 panels on human capital development. Most of the activity we are thinking is actually quite short term. What's happening in the next 3 months, next year, next 5 years. But if you take do this kind of transformational change, if you look at the kids below, say, 10 to 11 years now, we have an opportunity to train them to, say, the $60,000 jobs. If you want to create a surgeon, it is very, very difficult to make a surgeon who's already 16, 17 years old and doesn't have the initial background in math and science and that level of education. So we have a chance for kids below 10, perhaps 10 or 11 or below, to get them to that types of jobs. Our population is quite small. We have 330,000 children born every year in Sri Lanka. So it's not the same kind of challenges that India has. And we don't have a very large tribal community, or, it's quite homogeneous in that way. And our primary education is very, very good. In fact, our primary education is probably the most graceful thing that we have, because many countries, even in the US, they are struggling to figure out how to get early childhood education. Montessori is like a norm here. So kids from almost 2 years can start going to some kind of school. And so that part is really, really good. The problem happens two parts. As the kids grow, we need them to be staying in school and invest more both by the state but also by the parents. So that part we've kind of missed. So people above, say, 10 years, who's going to be eventually the parents of these new coming kids, to people who are 10 years above, what we can do is to get them to some kind of a middle tier of income so that they have a chance to keep these kids and keep educating. So that part we have a chance with. We had many ideas today, from upskilling to micro-skilling to finding various kind of even migration as a way of having that kind of income so that children can be taught. So these are few things. A very critical point I wanted to address. I know we have sometimes a different opinion on this. This is in Sri Lanka. The minimum wage was set for 12,500 rupees, which in dollar terms it was roughly $40 a month. It is now at 17,500 rupees, which is still about $60 a month, which is and the median household income is $250, less than $250 a month for a household of 4 people. The wages are too low to sustain any kind of this kind of ambitious growth, because you're not keeping the kids. Even when they are educated and they come to the workforce, they're not making enough money to even have a basic level of income. So mostly we just have people migrate. And frankly, the official policy of the government for the last 45 years, since probably early 80s, has been to please get out of the country and send your money back.
So there is, and I think that's a point we do agree upon, there's definitely a significant role for companies to play there as well. Because when I look at my own education, part of that was through formal schooling, but part of that took also place in my professional life, and actually a very substantial part of that. So companies investing in training their employees is incredibly important.
Absolutely. This is where the minimum wage part is. But part of it is to push the companies. In this book, I largely discuss, first of all, there's no blame given, right? Because what has happened has already happened. We are here, we are alive, we can make this happen. This is the kind of the big, bold kind of craziness that I think. And most of it is to be even our government and this whole state-owned economy is still about 25% of the economy. So the 75% of the rest of the economy is controlled by private sector, small, medium, large enterprises. So we have very little criticism or even review of that 75% because they are fragmented, because the companies are not as large as the government. So they are we are not paying attention to how much more they can be doing. I'm not saying every company is like this, but there are many companies who are doing amazing work. But the private sector itself can really push in here and to get us that, and that's where a lot of the opportunities are also.
Thank you. Yes, and for companies, there's various factors that make them more competitive that we addressed on some of the other panels. One is supply chain, but another one is cheap energy and infrastructure, which is your second law.
Second point. So what happens is when countries are growing, almost the energy consumption, because we are getting richer, the more companies are there, more businesses are there, more industries are there. You need energy, meaning that the energy supply to the country needs to be is almost linear with the GDP, at least to some level, and then it starts kind of tapering off. But if you don't plan that properly, like, so how do you if we can, and we are an island, so most of the energy needs to be imported and shipped into here. We use about 37% hydroelectricity here. That means, 63 is coal and oil that we are burning for all kinds of carbon problems, but also it needs to be imported here, which makes it a huge expense for us and makes our businesses quite less competitive, right? Because with how do you compete with that with even the Middle East, because the energy prices over here are so high. So planning that out is a very significant part, and the part about energy is it's not something you can do quickly. It'll take 10, 25 years to change the grid, how we put even. But there are lots of solutions. Bangladesh had one of the best programs on solar, rooftop solar. So the solar prices, thanks to Chinese manufacturers, have come down significantly. So there's a lot of things we can do, but all of them are 10, 20-year time of horizon. And if you don't get this energy part going as the GDP start going, what happens is we are almost, I think in the earlier panel, Dr. Salia said, we are almost at this point, we are actually not keeping the energy supply what the industries are demanding. So the industries are either deciding to move manufacturing to somewhere else, or because they're not competitive anymore here.
That's right, and that the competitiveness feeds into higher wages, etc. So energy is really crucial.
So even though we have very good manufacturing here, it's a globally competitive, to break into large-scale supply chains, you have to be globally competitive. And energy and because we don't produce a lot of the raw materials here itself, because of the land issue, amount of land available, raw materials are mostly imported. If you take garment industry, almost all raw material is imported. And if you're also importing all the energy, the only competitive advantage we would have is being able to exploit labor.
Yes, cheap labor.
Cheap labor. So, and that is not going to get our incomes to rise.
And in view of time, your third law is international cooperation?
Yes, and the third one is, if you can get these two kind of working, the next position is branding. So in a certain way, Sri Lanka is a small country. How many of you heard of Ireland? How many of you had a Guinness? How many of you have been to even an Irish dance concert, like a river dance? It's 4 million people, but the amount of, cultural awareness, almost, you can't escape any town without an Irish pub, right? So how are they executing that? So we have to, in a certain way, if you really wanted to grow, we have to think brand Sri Lanka, or we have done it relatively well in tea, but it has not really explored, and because that's also from a previous called, brand Ceylon. It's not brand Sri Lanka. So we have to start one side, you have to start building brand Sri Lanka. The other part is, we are a small country. If you try to go negotiate with India by yourself, our economy is rounding error for India. It was like, who's that guy? I hear a noise. I mean, the only, if any reason that they would negotiate is because we are located next to them, so you have to kind of deal with an annoying little brother. My kids are here also. But my point is that but however, there's cooperation that we can do. There's organizations like the Small Island Nations, there's ASEAN, all of these organizations that we should actively participate. And it's not only to take, but also to give. We have our Sri Lanka is 66,000 square kilometers in land mass, but we have almost 200 times that in ocean. So, and with climate change, with blue economy, blue bonds, green bonds, we can do so much. So, but if you're not participating, if you're not engaging in these kind of conversations, even leading these conversations, then you're just somebody who always gets into trouble and asks for a bailout. And that idea needs to change itself. And that's the third part.
And I think it's also up to companies to get out there, is sell their products internationally, capture the higher value end of the chain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we are in one of the biggest companies. The John Keel's group is the largest conglomerate in Sri Lanka, and we are in their leisure part of the business. So there are companies trying, and I think, you know, even for them, this is a bold move, as Nayana mentioned earlier. So we need them to go, we need them to grab enough kind of exit velocity so they can actually take us outside.
Thank you so much. Shall we open it up to questions from the audience? Do we have time?
I think we have a few minutes for some questions. Well, while they think about some questions, oh no. Oh no. No, just, I mean, like.
Hello, okay. Okay, yesterday there was a really cool comment that came from Mr. Ramesh Shah, who I think is hopefully still here. He was here earlier. Just about how why doesn't Sri Lanka tap into the Indian market much more easily? I mean, we're right there. It's a huge market. So I was so curious to know how you felt about that in terms of all products and all the things that we can create here.
Well, great question. Actually, I had been discussing about how our companies can actually tap into India and even other countries. But it's not only tapping into it, but do we have the capacity to actually be competitive in these markets, right? Mr. Shah runs, I think, one of the biggest retail networks, fashion retail networks. It's not only putting your products out, but is it competitively priced? And many times those challenges are not that easy to sort out also. So part of the reason is that, you know, how do we position our companies and the opportunity to be competitive in these markets. Second aspect is that the financial strength of most of the companies for us to compete outside is also, you know, quite challenging. I have seen even the bigger companies struggle to kind of have a sustained effort over a 5-10 year period to be in a market to really capture that. Because it's not like you go first year, you're going to be a profitable company.
Yes, and I think direct access to distributors, cutting out the middleman, is very important, and ensuring that your product is tweaked or tailor-made for that, or is adjusted to that market, because that market may have slightly different requirements than the Sri Lankan market.
Yeah, I mean, awareness of the markets is actually very, very critical. I think we had many conversations where knowing your customer and directly be able to create for your customer is critical, right? And both awareness, access to that markets is, you know, it's a big challenge for many of the industries. We have been pretty good at getting tea, you know, for over a traditional period of time of agricultural products, but now technology has also been a good export for us. There's a fairly high number of technology companies, both outsource kind of work as well as productized work that is happening. So with the components are there. Now it's essentially what I wanted to do here is, I have many dinner conversations and I ask very intelligent people who actually hold the keys to making this all happen. So when would Sri Lanka be a developed country? That's the answer. And then if I ask this question, would this happen in this century?
Yes.
No. But most of these conversations is not, and even though they're 75 years, and this is what forced me to actually write it down. Like we can't pass this to another generation, especially when we know we can fix it.
And I think a solution to needing a lot of capital is to try on a small scale. Because you can afford to fail on a small scale a number of times, and you're going to fail a number of times.
Yeah, and a lot of things have changed. I mean, the cost of actually getting any product out to at least test has significantly reduced thanks to social media. So, and our awareness of the products and how people are behaving is tremendously improved also because of interconnectivity. I think there are no questions, so I can escape this.
Asanka? Asanka, thank you so much for your being such a dreamer. I've always admired you for that. But I'm going to I know you want to keep this on a big high, but I think there's one important question, the elephant in the room, that we also have to tackle. I think in Sri Lanka's vulnerabilities, there are two big areas. One is in climate, and possibly Jaffna might be inundated by 2050 and disappear because it's 2 meters above water. So Maldives near us is 1 meter above water in most areas. So you're going to have what you've discussed earlier about migration, but it's on our doorstep because 2050 is not far away from your dream. So risk mitigation at the same time on that, as well as the whole ethnic issue. I mean, someone can play Putin's playbook again like they did the last time, and we can have another Easter bomb or anything triggering off all the racial volatility. So how do we mitigate the most imminent risks while we dream the big dream and move forward?
Actually, great question. They're the same. Actually, these are actually opportunities. On the third rule, when I was talking about leadership, we need to take leadership about climate change. We know we are going to be affected. There's enough survey maps that have produced that shows Jaffna, not only Jaffna, but Kalutara, the south area, which deltas will be underwater. So we already know this. And it is, and we can use this as an opportunity to mobilize industry, people, international support. We had several, there was a reason that Dr. Sanjan was here, because, there's plenty of money available for this kind of restructuring. And if you want to grow Sri Lanka really, really fast, we need a lot of money. This year, we are looking at FDI, or foreign direct investment, in nearly about $1 billion. It's not enough. We are already an $80 billion economy. 1/80th is not going to significantly change the input. But can we raise it to 15 billion? And if you do so, how do you get that 15 billion? And part of it is essentially climate change financing. We have to look at new areas of attracting this. So these issues of climate change adaptation itself can be an industry that we can create and create leadership in it, because not only us, there are many, many countries who are going to affect it. And if we know how to kind of solve that in an economical way that countries like us can afford, I think that itself can be the industry.
Was this about sea level rising as well? Correct me if I'm wrong.
It is sea level rising, but more than sea level rising, the temperature of the sea level can make the storms quite more powerful. We just saw it in Jamaica. What would have been a category 3 storm became a category 5 storm. Each category is 10 times stronger than the other one. So category 3 to category 5 is 180 miles an hour winds. In kilometers is 240 miles, 240 kilometer wind. No building is made to, or vast majority of the buildings or no house is going to withstand that. So, you know, and no different for Sri Lanka. The bigger challenge is more than the sea level rising. I think the ocean warming that could make a lot of our storms a lot more stronger, and that could be very, very devastating, to, especially for our tourism economy. Oh no, these are all hard questions. I think we should end now. Hi, Colonel Nalin, tell me.
Yeah, thank you, Asanka. I think you brought a very relevant and timely point when Sri Lanka is going to be a developed nation. So I think as per the previous plan, there was a plan Sri Lanka would be a developed nation by 2047. If we wanted to achieve that target, so we have to maintain 11.5 economic growth. Practically, it's very difficult. And BUI,
I actually disagree, but I'll come to that.
Okay, thank you. So that's my point. Okay. And our BOI is almost attracted, so during the entire history, only 7 billion FDIs. So you mentioned that very good point about we are a maritime nation, and we are surrounded by the sea. So do you think that we have paid enough attention to develop our blue ocean economy? And do you have any other opinion or suggestions to we can enforce for our policymakers? Thank you.
Yeah. Let me address the first question. The 11.5% growth rate assumes no direct investment additional direct investment is coming in, or at least it's also growing linearly, right? What if we have, say, UAE invest $200 billion here next year, or commit to invest? So we are a small economy, so even a $10, $20 billion investment can make a huge difference, right? So yes, the 11.5, all of that assumes like a linear growth of reinvesting by, savings, etc. It doesn't have to be. And I think the opportunity for us is to create this place as such a, investment magnet. If you use the same argument, Singapore should be still a very cheap, poor country. If you use the same argument, Dubai should be, no more than Sri Lanka. But how hard they developed, because they were able to attract vast amount of investment coming from outside to their own countries to create that growth level. There's no difference from us. There's more than South Korea, Singapore, Dubai, Qatar. Everybody's playing the same playbook, so we can learn and repeat. I didn't answer your second question, but I forgot it.
Thank you. I think we've come to the end of this conversation, we've been told. Thank you so much, Asanka, and I strongly recommend everybody, for everybody to read this book.
Yeah, there's a table over here with the books. Feel free to grab a copy if you are interested, but if you grab a copy, you have to send me a note or a review. I mean, I can't give you free work. I can give you free, but it has to work. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for indulging me on this.
No gifts for Asanka, of course. But thank you so much, Arjette.